the one thing that did sink in when I was listening last week, and I hear it again tonight, was the two shading approach, which I think has been raised a little bit by members of this Board of Supervisors, to the building lots, the light green areas, the dark green areas, the parts where you can build and the parts where even though you bought the land, you can't touch. And I just want to make sure we understand this correctly, that the housing lots, and I understand A5 is a amended version of what we saw at the Planning Commission, where they've changed, how they're going to designate the dark green areas, my understanding, correct?
It's not amended with respect to the lot areas and the shaded areas are
Right.
the same, it's just the physical demarcation of the buffer being moved back into the lot.
Right. So, and that's because that dark green area must remain undisturbed, correct?
That's correct.
And so there's an actual difference between the minimum building envelope, according to the township ordinance, and the lot that a person would buy, as I understand it. So the light green is where you can build, the dark green is where you're not supposed to touch, right? And so conservation management as a concept requires that the lots be a certain minimum size, right? And they skew towards larger sizes. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that those lot sizes originally was really 1.5 acres was a by right build in a conservation management zoning situation, right? 1.5? 3.5, I think. So what we're doing here, the calculations used here come out to about 3/4 of an acre lot size. So there must be some rule that allows them to go less than what the conservation zoning originally had. Maybe it changed, I don't know.
Well, let me respond to that. The rule or statute that allows them to go less than the minimum acreage in the CM district is the essence of this use B12 cluster development, where instead of spreading out 60 plus homes, 80 homes all over the property that they own, leaving very little, if any, open space, that would meet the minimum lot requirements of the CM district, but they're seeking the alternative of clustering or making those lots smaller and bringing them close together in order to create such a large area of undeveloped open space.
Thanks, I appreciate that. But it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but isn't conservation management in most respects, the spirit of it is to address density. And it feels like when you start pushing things together, yes, on the one hand, you're giving this more open space over here, but you're creating more problems because you're increasing the density in a smaller space, which I think is, to me, somewhat antithetical to what conservation management was supposed to do. Otherwise, why even have it, right? You're supposed to be protecting the land from an overly developed area, and there are reasons, obviously, that were felt to be important. That's why we created conservation management zoning. So the thing that bothers me is when you sell homeowners lots where more than half of the purchased land is not usable by that homeowner, their lot, look where that green line is, look where they're proposing to put some type of barrier, a fence, vegetation or something. More than half of the lot would not be usable by that homeowner. It seems a little bit like a sleight of hand. I mean, what you're giving with the one, you're taking away with the other. And it's really designed to allow development where conservation management really didn't want you to be developing. That's why they had minimum lot sizes. That's why you had all these other rules, because you weren't supposed to be able to shove houses that close together in a conservation management zoning area. I mean, how many, and this conversation started, and Mr. Mack spoke a bit about it, but how many landowners do you think are going to honor the non-disturbance when they have paid full value for the land? They can see hundreds of feet behind their house, out their back window, and they only want to put a tool shed, or they only want to dump their grass clippings, or they only want to put in a hot tub, or even do something as seemingly innocuous as letting their pets roam back there and dig up and do their business. I mean, who's going to say that you can't do that? Well, nobody is. Well, actually, what landowner wouldn't think they can, and that they have the right to? They bought the land, they paid full value, and I know there'll be an easement, and I know there'll be all these documents that they will bury in their safe deposit box along with their title search and never look at it again. But the conservation zoning management rules were put in place to protect against a certain level of density and a certain level of abuse. So who's supposed to enforce that? Well, guys, you are. You're the ones that are supposed to be the protectors of the land. It's not supposed to be the homeowners association. It's not supposed to be the neighbor who rats out his neighbor because they built a shed. No, I understand exactly what you're saying, because there are neighbors that we all have that do things that are improper. But are you going to go and be the guy that rats them out? No, you're not. You have to live with those people. They're your neighbors. So then it's left to you. So it seems to me that this is a way of moving enforcement and trying to say, well, it's up to the homeowner, and it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like that's the way we should operate here. When was the last time anybody came in here with a real by right development, which actually said 1.5 acres, 3.5 acres, right? Does anybody do that? No, because it's not economically viable to develop that way. They come in with squished in proposals because that's how it works. There's been so much development here in the last 15, 10, 5 years that the character of this township is under assault. Pretty soon there'll be no conservation management land left. Will you be the ones that look back over the next 5 or 10 years and say, gosh, it's so sad. We really should have done something about all this overbuilding back then, but now it's too late. I ask you, on behalf of myself, on behalf of my neighbors, on behalf of other people that care about open space in this town, that the open space that made this town have the feeling and have the community that it does have, to enforce the rules. Enforce the rules the way they're supposed to be enforced. Enforce them not just for the technical. So I'm sure Mr. Edelman and the rest of the folks are within the compliance, the technical compliance. But the spirit of what conservation management is all about, I believe, is violated by cramming houses into small little building envelopes with hundreds of feet behind them that you can't touch, and asking people to, and expecting people to just say, okay, I won't do anything. I think that's a bit of a bridge too far, and I ask you to consider that closely before deciding what to do here. Thank you very much for your consideration.